Welcome to Robo Success, the podcast that loves robots, marketing, and success. Here we spotlight the innovators building the future of robotics. Hit subscribe, share with a friend, and let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Robo Success Podcast. Hello, Andy. How are you?
I'm doing good, Jessica. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. So today, what are we going to be talking about, Andy?
What are we going to be talking about? We just got back. Actually, I have to be honest. We got back from the Humanoid Summit a couple of weeks ago. We're recording this a couple of weeks later. So I think we need to talk about the Humanoid Summit, everything that happened there. It was a great event. Um, have you gotten a chance to recover from the Humanoid Summit and get back to a normal life?
Kind of, but no, it's still, I think this industry, this ecosystem needs a lot of work. And I think it's something that we are trying to accomplish here. And it's still recovering, but it's still working on what is next, right? I think you can probably agree that you see that is now growing and is coming in a global ecosystem where a lot of people from different regions, cultures, countries are coming and are interested in see what is happening, right? And what do you think was the most important thing that you saw during the event?
Boy, it's hard to narrow in on one thing. One thing that I really noticed during the Humanoid Summit this year is the focus continues to shift. And, in the past, we've seen a lot of focus on development of the platforms and the capabilities of the platforms. The markets and the opportunities for humanoids have been evolving for sure. But one thing that I saw this year that I wasn't necessarily expecting is there was a lot more conversations and talking, and honestly there was a lot of new startups that are all focusing on compliance and safety in the humanoid space. There was a lot more discussion on the compliance in humanoids. And that was great to see. This is a topic that always comes up of how do we ensure safety and how do we make sure that we're developing platforms. The unique thing about humanoids is they're operating around humans unlike any other robotic platform that we've seen. We've had some cobots, we've had other systems that are working with humans. Humanoids are working right alongside in the same space and a lot of times conforming to the same safety regulations as humans operating in that workplace. So it was great to see a lot of conversations around the safety and compliance for robotics this year. What about you? What was the one clear takeaway for you?
So I will add on top of what you're saying, and this is what I like. I think talking about these topics for me means that the market is getting ready, going from demos to really real deployment. And I think that is going to be the most interesting part to start seeing that robots is no more about flashy videos and views. They're not going to be measured by how many shares and likes and comments have in a video. Now we are going to start seeing that the real people using it is going to start measuring by efficiency, by ROI, like what is really the value of this industry. And that is what I'm interested to start seeing. And we see companies that are now moving from having pilots to start having real use cases. And a lot of people keep talking like, oh no, they are still 10 years far from where we need them. Others say, no, they are going to be ready in 2 years. And it was interesting. One of the panels we have, there were 4 different people talking about this. And each of them have a totally different timeline estimated when are going to be ready. Each of them coming with different background, very, very knowledge in the industry. And this is when I was like, okay, where is my beat, right? Are they going to be really ready in 3 years, or really we are that far in 10 years? One of the topics I keep seeing and I keep coming see in companies being born is about the data collection and the data training for humanoids, because now is part of the next stage where, okay, We have the hardware, we have the technology. Now, how we make the brains of these robots, how we make them to be useful. Once we start connecting that data and connecting that with the hardware, we are really gonna see these capabilities, right? Right now, all is kind of a theory, and again, people saying like, "Oh yes, my humanoid is gonna be able to do this for this many hours," and it's like, okay, it's gonna be really doing it that well for that many hours, or what else needs to be happening? I think this is the most interesting part for me, to start seeing that now things are becoming real. They are no more a pilot, they are no more a prototype, they are no more a video flashy. Now people is starting asking real questions.
You and I talked a little bit. I really like the conversation that you had around, well, how long is it going to be until humanoids are ready for the market? Is it 2 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 2 months? Is it 30 years? And I look at that question and I think that's the wrong question. And let me reframe this question for you and see what you think about it. I would say that the humanoids, the hardware, the technology has reached a point where I'm going to say that it's ready today. And what's not ready is the markets and industry. So, do you agree with that? And whether or not you agree with it, how do you feel the market and the industries are viewing humanoids? What's going to be that first market? And how long is it going to take before the companies are ready to integrate the humanoids into their business and their business operations?
I agree that that's one part of the market to be 100% ready. I keep seeing a lot of industries come in to us and say, hey, we are looking for humanoids for hospitals. We're looking for humanoids in the logistics, right? But it's still, like in many cases, right? I have been working in technology for too long. People still doesn't know what they're really looking for. And that is one of the key parts, because you have, especially big industries, complex systems, right? Where for many years, again, robotics is not new. Robotics
Hmm.
has been existed for too many years. I think now where we are seeing also is switching from the big robot, the industrial robot, to physical AI, to something that is a little smarter. Are we ready for that? And when we're talking about now is AI, which we can think about AI as ChatGPT. How many people use ChatGPT with all the capabilities, right? We just used to chat with ChatGPT, ask questions, do this for me, do this, but do we understand all the capabilities? And it's the same in now with robotics, who are turning into physical AI. How are we going to really use them? Is the market really that ready? Is the whole system around ready? Right? How much implies to have a humanoid walking in a hospital, right? What it needs to be happening around that. I was working in another company where we were implementing robotics in hospitals, and you need to educate all the people that it was going to be around the robot, right? What was implication? What were the things to understand that, in order for the robot to finish the cleaning, needs to happen in ABC. And if something goes wrong, how you can fix that problem, right? Somebody still needs the human intervention at some point. So those kind of things, you need to have the people that is really going to be interested in having this a successful adoption. And there are a lot of pieces before that happen. So while the also technology is still developing to be ready, I think the other part is also understand how the markets are starting getting ready for that. I think there are hundreds of use cases for humanoids, right? What are going to be the first? Of course, bigger companies that have more budget, that probably have a department to say, okay, I have the money to test this use case. If this works, we can escalate to other, and so on. And then they are going to be the first ones to start adopting while other companies start seeing like, okay, if this company was successful with this, I also want to have the same success.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And that aligns with what I was talking about earlier too, about a lot of the conversations shifting to compliance, right? As we say, okay, humanoids have reached this point and we're seeing this opportunity in this market. Now, how do we integrate it? And, for healthcare, it's, well, how do we deal with the HIPAA and the data security? When we talk about like industrial and large OEMs, I had some conversations around, well, the human operators, there's a lot of rules and regulations, everything from the OSHA, operational safety and health, to, general processes and procedures of how work is done in an industrial setting. And so it's really interesting to see that people are digging into that. And I talked to a couple of individuals who their company is really focused on, hey, we're helping with the compliance, we're helping with the data security. And I think that's very indicative of where the market is, where we have some of these larger corporations that are saying, okay, I see it. I see the technology, I see the use case, I see the value. Now let's get through my safety review board so that I can integrate it into my factory.
Yep, absolutely. Now, another, of course, topic that for me is very interesting in marketing and customer success is now what also means this for the business, right?
Mm,
Again, for all these years, I think the companies has been focused on having a marketing that is very target to business, right? Because at the end, they need
mm,
that. So all their videos, all their marketing material and so on is targeting more towards that part. And again, I think now you have to start understanding who is going to be your real customer, who is going to be the real end user, and how you transform your marketing into talking to that people. How are you going to be starting creating your customer success team around that? Again, I have been for too many years deploying too many robotics, and at the end, always the part that makes successful a company is how you really help the end user to adopt technology, especially when the barrier is, oh, robots are going to take over my job. They want me
mhm.
to train this robot because then they're going to fire me or they are going to be doing cuts on the department. So these people, right, has this barrier. And again, I have seen this not only in the robotics industry. Every time you implement technology, people feel frustration. People feel like, oh, what, I have to learn a new system for accounting. I remember many years ago when accounting software started and I was helping implementing that. It's like, but I have been using Excel, right? Why I need to go and track it here? So it's pretty similar with the robotics, but it's even more difficult because you're talking something that is taking physical space. It's not even
Mm.
now in your computer or something that is a little that you can close and say it doesn't exist. Now you're going to have a humanoid or a robot around you in your space work. So it creates a little even more, I would say, different mindset on how you are going to be helping people to embrace it. Again, in one of the companies I was working for, I remember my goal was again that adoption. And when I was coming to see where the robot was, it was in the storage collecting dust because people were afraid to use it. People didn't want to use it, right? They say, oh, no, 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 it's so difficult to turn it on and this and that. It wasn't, right? It was just any,
Mhm.
as connecting, I don't know, your vacuum. But it was this afraid of something is big, it's gonna break, or I don't know, I don't understand it when it's so easy, but it's kind of breaking that mindset. So now companies need to start thinking that the marketing, that the customer success, that the commercial team needs to start thinking how we're gonna help these companies to embrace. It's not just about like, okay, I sell, this is nice, this is good, buy. And BC or whoever takes the decision, of course, they are excited about what you are offering. But again, the level of the end user that might be not on your side, and you need to
Mhm.
see how that's gonna, change the game for what you're doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had a lot of conversations at the Humanoid Summit around that same topic is when you're developing marketing, when you're developing, whether it's pitch decks or it's social media or it's videos, whatever you're putting out in the space, you need to understand who you're trying to appeal to and who you're really attracting. And a lot of the startups that I talk to, depending on their idea, it's like, well, are you trying to attract your end customers or you're trying to attract venture capital? And the way that you market to those groups are very different, right? And if you're trying to raise capital, there's a playbook, there's a methodology. You have to understand what those investors are really looking for and how you can appeal to those investors. Same thing, if you're trying to go after, manufacturing or healthcare, whatever that market is, understanding that market and understanding what they care about. I think that you touched on something that I haven't been thinking of it's the impression of what is this humanoid doing in my workspace and how is this affecting myself and my job? Do you think we're going to see a shift in marketing to try to drive adoption from the workforce? Because at the end of the day, the objective of humanoid robots is not to replace workers. That's not the point at all. Just like, you know, cobots and automated manufacturing equipment, like that was not intended to replace jobs. What we saw in the Industrial Revolution is really it makes the working conditions better, it makes the jobs better, it makes the pay better. And it is my sincere hope that humanoids is the same thing. It's not to replace workers, it's to deal with, I always like to talk about the dull, dirty, or dangerous, right? That's where we want to put robotics. Um, so it's making the jobs that exist better, increasing that pay and making people and companies more efficient. So do you think, are we going to see a shift in some of these marketing strategies to help enforce that with the workforce and gain some traction at the lower echelons in some of these companies?
I hope so. That's my hope, right? And
Yeah.
that's what I'm here again in my experience trying to say. I mean, if the companies are listening to us, it's like, how are you gonna use your marketing efforts to target that segment, right? They might be not the final maker decisions, but at the end, they are going to be very big important part of the adoption where the boss is going to come 6 months later and it's going to ask, okay, what happened with this robot? How it's doing? Blah, blah, blah. And if they say, oh, no, we don't like it, we just put it in the storage, it's so difficult, it's hard, this and that, then of course you are not going to keep having sales, right? You're gonna start like, yes, at the beginning you probably are selling millions, but then later who is using it, right? What is happening with that adoption? How people can say, okay, this is great, I need another one, right? Or we're seeing the success and we want to deploy it in other departments. And this again, I keep seeing it many times where companies doesn't focus on that. They want only, and again, I have been in many customer success department. It's like, oh, you talk to this person who is the boss, make sure they are happy. You have to make them happy. But at the end, it's like, who really needs to be happy around the robot? How can we really help that people? A lot of these people is still now, they don't even know how to operate an iPhone, right? Those people like they have an old phone that they just say, I just use it for text messages and calls, right? Uh, Probably the farther they go is having a WhatsApp. So is an effort for marketing and of course your customer success department, your support and your product development to make sure that all this is put in place to help that people to be successful. If they are successful, everything goes from the bottom to the top. Oh, they are super happy using it, right?
Mhm.
Again, I remember selling a software for schools, right? Of course, the principals were excited. Oh, I want this. Sounds amazing. But if the teachers were not happy using it, who cares if the principal and whoever else was on board of the software? And then the teachers were, this doesn't work for my classroom. I don't want to use it. This is difficult, makes me lose more time than really what I need to do with the children. I need to focus on the children and knowing, learning something new.
Mm.
So it's the same here, right? Like it really, like you say, we want the robotics to be around us, being helping us and no causing more trouble. So if the people perceive them and this is going to be a problem, your company is not going to get that far.
Yeah, I agree. It all comes down to the lowest level user that's operating the equipment, right? Who is gaining efficiency and who's benefiting the most from this? And it's oftentimes, obviously, the company is going to benefit, but if it's making a worker's job easier, they should be on the front line of wanting that implementation of, hey, this is going to help me do my job, help me be more efficient, and increase my capabilities. And so that's definitely a strategy that I've seen be very successful of getting that adoption at the lowest level in a company where it's going to benefit the most and start driving up. Because if you have a worker that says, hey, if you buy me this tool, it's going to double my efficiency, that is an easy decision for a business owner or a manager to make. And I've seen the inverse also. I've seen technology that is sold to a business owner with big promises, but then the operators and the users say, well, actually this doesn't help me or I don't understand it. And so that extra function, that extra capability never gets exercised and the business doesn't see the benefit of it. So I think we're going to see more and more of that with humanoids as we go forward and as adoption starts to ramp up is really helping to um, it's marketing, but it's also education of educating the workforce and educating the people that are going to be using robotics in their day-to-day work to make sure that they're taking advantage of that technology and using it to the maximum extent.
I love that point, education. And I think right now again, there is a lot of communication, a lot of information everywhere. Where now, especially since I see a lot of humanoids trying to be deploying in public spaces, right? Even at homes, where we have to start educating people about what really is robotics, the safety, because now again, it's like internet, right? At some point, we will have to be educating people like how to create a good password, how to, keep safe all these websites to visit, all that. I think now and it's something that I haven't seen is how we are educating people about robots. What is going to be safe when you see a robot walking, right? What you have to do because we have to start learning that etiquette around robots, even children, right? Like I cannot tell my child, oh, just go and run and hug the robot because and some people start humanizing them too and thinking like they are as another person that is gonna react and the robot is gonna say, oh no, it's a child, I'm not gonna. So
Yeah.
we need to start educating also about now normal people what are robots, right? How you have to, like if you have one at home, what implies, right? I remember this big hack that it was in one of the vacuums, right? And people go freak out. And of course, was a very hit on the market on that. but because people doesn't understand what it means that, a robot needs probably sensors, what access they have, cameras here and there. So I think it would be something very interesting to see from one of these big companies to start also educating just regular people about robot safety, what implies to be around one of them. I would love to see that.
Yeah, to share an example, I had a robot, actually it was a piece of construction equipment that I was working on that was, fully autonomous, fully unmanned, and it was amazing how comfortable people were around that platform during the development stages where I was not comfortable. It's like, this is a piece of equipment that, weighs over 6,000 pounds. Like, no, you can't just walk in front of it while it's operating. And that was a development platform, right? So it wasn't ready for prime time yet. And so I think that a lot of people that don't work with robotics, they're not in the robotic space, they don't understand. And so I think that education is very important, and not just for humanoids, right? But for all robotics, as we see, more in advancements in embodied AI, we see more, self-driving cars on the road, more of these things of just ensuring that everyone understands what the system is and how to behave around these systems. I think that's very important.
Yep, I agree. Well, Andy, so we are getting, at the end of the episode. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know you and I keep talking and talking about this.
Yeah.
But do you want to add something else before we end it?
Well, I want to end on a high note, and I want to say I love the Humanoid Summit in Tokyo. This was my first trip to Japan, and so a big thank you to the entire country and the city of Tokyo. It was an amazing experience, very welcoming. I loved Tokyo, and I'm really excited to go back.
Oh, yes, same. I can, say the same for each company that also was there helping us. The country is beautiful. If you haven't, honestly, like it is a place to visit for too many reasons. But of course, if you love robotics, that's also a good place to visit. So thank you, Andy. This was amazing. And well, see you next episode. Thank you.
And see you in Silicon Valley for the next
Oh,
Humanoid
yes,
Summit.
that's true. In December 1st and 2nd.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.